There exists a moment in the psychological journey of some narcissists that Peterson considers the most terrifying confrontation any human being can face, standing before the mirror of their own darkness and seeing, for the first time, the monster they have become. This isn't about recognizing flaws or admitting mistakes. This is about confronting the full scope of their capacity for evil, manipulation, and systematic destruction of human lives. Peterson revealed what happens when narcissists are forced to look into what Jung called the shadow. Not just their shadow, but a shadow so dark and extensive that it can literally drive them insane. What you're about to discover about this confrontation will shock you about the depths of human darkness and why some people simply cannot survive seeing who they really are. If you want to understand what's really happening inside the mind of a narcissist when the mask falls, subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment down below if you already suspected that one day this collapse would happen. The narcissist's mirror is not like the mirror that normal people use for self-reflection. When healthy individuals engage in introspection, they might discover uncomfortable truths about themselves, but these truths are typically manageable and can lead to growth. Peterson, drawing deeply on Carl Jung's work on shadow integration, discovered that narcissists possess what he calls exponential darkness, shadow material so extensive and malevolent that confronting it can cause complete psychological fragmentation. Imagine, for a moment, looking in a mirror, and instead of seeing your face, you see the accumulated pain of every person you've systematically destroyed. Instead of your eyes, you see the tears of children you emotionally abandoned. Instead of your mouth, you see the lies that poisoned dozens of relationships. Instead of your hands, you see the instruments of manipulation that crushed the spirits of people who tried to love you. Peterson, based on decades of clinical observation and profound understanding of personality psychology, discovered that narcissists develop what he calls mirror avoidance architecture, elaborate psychological systems designed specifically to prevent them from ever seeing themselves clearly. These systems can function for decades, protecting them from any glimpse of their true nature. But can you imagine the psychological shock when these mirror avoidance systems finally fail? According to recent studies in neuropsychology, when narcissists are forced to confront their complete shadow simultaneously, the brain experiences something similar to what happens during severe psychotic episodes, a complete breakdown in the ability to distinguish between self and reality. It's like someone who has been wearing virtual reality goggles their entire life, showing them a beautiful, heroic version of themselves, suddenly having those goggles ripped away and being forced to see the devastation they've actually been causing while blind to reality. The shock isn't just emotional, it's existential, and then the mirror reflects the unthinkable. Peterson describes this moment as one of the most psychologically devastating experiences a human being can undergo. It's not just seeing that you've hurt people, it's confronting the reality that you have been, for decades, a force of systematic evil in the world. It's recognizing that you found satisfaction in others' pain, that you deliberately chose cruelty over kindness in countless situations, that you were the monster in other people's nightmares. The first stage of mirror confrontation, which Peterson calls shadow recognition shock, involves the sudden, overwhelming realization that the person you believed yourself to be never existed. You weren't a misunderstood hero or a victim of circumstances. You were a predator who systematically identified and exploited the vulnerabilities of almost everyone you encountered. Peterson documented cases where narcissists experiencing this shock literally cannot speak for hours or days. They sit motionless, staring at nothing as their minds attempt to process the magnitude of their own capacity for evil. Some describe feeling like they're watching footage of someone else's life, unable to accept that they were the person committing those acts of manipulation and cruelty. But is every narcissist psychologically capable of surviving this kind of shadow confrontation? Peterson's research reveals something profoundly disturbing. Most are not. The psychological shock of seeing their complete darkness simultaneously can cause permanent dissociation, severe mental illness, or complete personality fragmentation. Some narcissists, when confronted with the mirror of their darkness, develop what Peterson calls shadow psychosis, a state where they become convinced that the evil person in the mirror is someone else who has been controlling their actions. It's a final, desperate attempt by the mind to avoid accepting responsibility for their own malevolence. Can you imagine your mind literally fracturing rather than accepting that you have been deliberately evil for decades? Peterson explains that some narcissists prefer insanity to acknowledgement of their own darkness. It's psychologically less painful to believe you're being controlled by evil forces than to accept that you are the evil force. Leave in the comments if you've ever witnessed someone appearing to lose touch with reality when confronted with undeniable evidence of their own malevolent behavior. The second stage, which Peterson calls darkness integration crisis, occurs when narcissists realize that they cannot simply acknowledge their shadow and then continue as before. True integration of this level of darkness would require completely reconstructing their personality around the acceptance that they have been a source of systematic evil. For most people, integrating their shadow involves accepting relatively manageable aspects of themselves that they've kept hidden. For narcissists, shadow integration would require accepting that they have been monsters disguised as human beings, that they found pleasure in others' suffering, that they deliberately chose evil over good in thousands of interactions over decades. Peterson discovered that narcissists confronting this integration crisis frequently experience what he calls moral vertigo, a disorienting realization that they have no moral foundation whatsoever. They discover that what they thought were principles were actually just strategic considerations about what would benefit them most. But what happens when narcissists finally see the full extent of their darkness will shock you profoundly. Peterson revealed that many develop what he calls darkness fascination. Instead of being horrified by their capacity for evil, they become intrigued, even proud of it. They begin to see their manipulative abilities as evidence of their sophistication, their capacity for cruelty as proof of their strength, their talent for destroying others as a form of artistic expression. It's shadow integration gone horribly wrong. Instead of leading to humility and change, it leads to even more sophisticated malevolence. And here's the most terrifying part. According to Peterson, some narcissists who successfully integrate their shadow become what he calls conscious predators, individuals who are fully aware of their evil nature and choose to embrace it completely. They stop pretending to be good people and become openly, deliberately destructive. Can you imagine someone looking in the mirror, seeing that they are genuinely evil, and deciding that they're perfectly comfortable with that reality? Peterson describes these individuals as perhaps the most dangerous people in society because they combine complete self-awareness with complete lack of conscience. But let me tell you something that will completely change your perspective on narcissistic shadow work. According to Peterson's research, there is a crucial difference between narcissists who confront their darkness and become even more evil, and those who somehow manage to use the confrontation as motivation for genuine transformation. The difference lies in what Peterson calls horror tolerance, the capacity to see your own evil clearly while still maintaining enough psychological stability to choose differently. It requires the ability to feel genuine horror at your own actions, while not becoming paralyzed or fascinated by that horror. Peterson argues that this kind of mature shadow integration is extraordinarily rare in narcissists because it requires psychological resources that their personality structure typically lacks. Most narcissists, when confronted with their complete darkness, either fragment, deny, or embrace the evil rather than using it as motivation for change. And then arises a question that few have the courage to explore. Should narcissists be forced to confront their complete darkness, even knowing that most cannot handle this confrontation without becoming either insane or more dangerous? Peterson, with his deeply pragmatic but humane perspective, suggests that sometimes yes, when the alternative is allowing them to continue operating from unconscious evil. But he also acknowledges that forcing shadow confrontation in narcissists is extraordinarily dangerous. Unlike other forms of psychological work that generally lead to healing, narcissistic shadow work can create conscious monsters or completely destroy the person's capacity for rational thought. But here's something that will leave you completely disturbed. Peterson revealed that even narcissists who appear to genuinely confront their darkness often find ways to use that confrontation as a new source of manipulation and control. They become the shadow-aware narcissist who talks extensively about their dark nature, who shares insights about their capacity for evil, who uses their apparent honesty about their darkness as a way to gain trust and fascination from others. It's narcissism disguised as profound self-awareness. Peterson describes this as darkness narcissism. Narcissism built around being especially aware of and articulate about your own capacity for evil. It's perhaps the most sophisticated form of manipulation because it appears to be complete honesty while actually being a new strategy for gaining attention and control. Leave down below what you think. Is it possible for a narcissist to genuinely confront their darkness without turning that confrontation into a performance? Peterson's answer is deeply pessimistic. He documents extraordinarily rare cases where narcissists, after confronting their shadow, withdraw completely from any attempts to discuss, explain, or gain recognition for their darkness awareness. They don't seek fascination for their evil insights, don't use their shadow knowledge as a tool for manipulation. Instead, they quietly dedicate themselves to practical actions that minimize the harm they cause. Avoid situations where they might be tempted to manipulate others, and focus entirely on damage control rather than personal growth or transformation. Their shadow awareness becomes functional rather than performative. But this kind of authentic shadow integration without performance is so uncommon that Peterson estimates it occurs in less than 0.1% of narcissists who experience genuine confrontation with their darkness. And here's something that no one tells you about narcissistic shadow work. It can be more dangerous for their victims than their continued unconsciousness. A narcissist who is fully aware of their capacity for evil, but chooses to continue exercising it, can be far more destructive than one who operates from unconscious malevolence. Peterson frequently warns families that shadow awareness in narcissists doesn't automatically lead to behavioral improvement and may actually make their manipulation more sophisticated and harder to detect. What you're going to discover now will transform your understanding of human evil and psychological development. Peterson revealed that the narcissist's mirror teaches us that some people's darkness is so extensive that confronting it may not lead to healing or growth, but to conscious choice of evil or complete psychological destruction. This challenges therapeutic assumptions that awareness always leads to positive change. Sometimes awareness of our capacity for evil is simply information that we use to become more effectively evil. The mirror doesn't automatically transform us. It simply shows us who we are, and we must choose what to do with that knowledge. Peterson also warns about something profound. Our contemporary culture's fascination with shadow work may be encouraging people to explore darkness they're not equipped to integrate safely. Not everyone should look deeply into their capacity for evil, especially if they lack the psychological resources to use that knowledge constructively. And here's the final truth that will reshape your understanding of human nature. The narcissist's mirror reveals that confronting our darkness is not always healing, not always necessary, and not always safe. Some people are better off maintaining some illusions about themselves rather than confronting truths they cannot psychologically Handle, the ultimate wisdom lies in understanding that your safety and healing do not depend on narcissists confronting their darkness. Their shadow work is their journey, not something you should encourage, facilitate, or wait for. In fact, a narcissist who has confronted their darkness may be more dangerous to you than one who remains unconscious of their evil nature. Real protection from narcissistic abuse comes not from hoping they will see their darkness and change, but from seeing their darkness clearly yourself and building boundaries that protect you regardless of their level of self-awareness. Because true wisdom about human evil lies not in encouraging others to confront their monsters, but in recognizing those monsters clearly and responding appropriately to protect yourself and those you love. If you've made it this far, you're beginning to understand that psychological work isn't always healing, self-awareness isn't always beneficial, and some people's journeys into their own darkness should be avoided rather than encouraged. In the next video, we're going to explore the final topic in this series, how Jordan Peterson analyzes what happens when denial fails and narcissists face their ultimate breakdown. Subscribe and activate notifications, because this conclusion will reveal the most profound truths about human psychology and why some people simply cannot be saved, even by complete self-awareness.